Good afternoon, everybody at Newman University. Anybody listening to 98.5 WNUW LP Aston. My name is Joe Tusio, and I have a lot to get to today involving the sports world, especially in this local Philadelphia area and everything that's going on. In the past couple days, the Senior Bowl has taken over the NFL spectrum besides the Super Bowl, as most people know. But the Senior Bowl is a time when teams go out and scout who is going to be the next talent that they will draft. Every team gets a look at the top seniors. And the number one guy that seems to be lighting up the media scene in the football world is Carson Wentz, the quarterback from North Dakota State. Yes, North Dakota State, not some guy from some big school, a guy from a small school that is showing signs that he could be a potential top 10 pick. And the hype over the last couple of days has just been gradually increasing every single day. And some teams are looking at him as a top 10 pick. Some teams see him as still a first-round pick. But he's a guy that has a skill set that can translate well to the NFL. The guy has the size at 6'5", 6'6", 230 pounds. So he's built for the NFL, and his skill set can work in multiple schemes. He can be a guy that can drop back and throw any pass. He's a guy that can run with the ball if you need him to. He doesn't have the top speed of somebody like RG3, but he's a guy that can make plays with his feet if he needs to. And he has a leadership skill that is needed in this league. And quite frankly, there are a couple teams that could use his skill set right now. And one of the top teams is the Browns. They have the number 2 pick in this year's draft. Johnny Football probably isn't going to be their guy. They brought in Hugh Jackson as their next head coach. He is a great offensive-minded coach that is going to bring a great scheme and a great leadership to the Browns. But there are also two quarterbacks who are maybe projected ahead of Wentz at this point in Jared Goff and Paxton Lynch. But they're not playing at the Senior Bowl. And the Senior Bowl may give Wentz a leg up on those two other top players, because teams that want Goff, that want Lynch, that want to see what they can do are going to have to wait until the Combine. And most people know that the Combine is where everybody can show that they got the speed, that they can throw the ball 75 yards. And that's fine. If you can throw the ball a mile, great. But if you can't throw the ball a mile to a guy that's going to catch the ball, there's no point of having a big arm then. And Carson Wentz right now is showing his skill set of what he can do. And many teams like him. Dallas might want to draft him. The Browns might want to draft him. And maybe the Eagles want to draft him. But I'll be getting into that later on today's show. I'm just going to go through over the last few years of the quarterbacks that have been taken in the NFL draft. There are going to be some guys that some people may not know, but I'm just going to go through the list of most of the quarterbacks that were taken in the draft over the last 2 or 3 years. And in this last year's draft, the top 2 picks were quarterbacks. In Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, Winston went 1, Mariota went 2. So those 2 guys are seen to be franchise-type players, and so far they're playing very well. Garrett Grayson, who is a not really unknown guy, but a guy that had a good skill set, went in the 3rd round to the Saints. Maybe he's going to be the heir apparent to when Breeze is done in a few years. Sean Mannion was a guy that had the size to be a quarterback in this league, but is a guy that needs to develop still. He's with the Rams. Everybody's favorite quarterback from this area, Nicky Foles, is with them, so maybe he's going to come back and start for him. Maybe they're going to give another quarterback a chance. But he's a guy that could be a pretty good quarterback in the next few years. Bryce Petty was a guy that was seen as being a great quarterback, Baylor's next great quarterback. RG3 was there. He put that team on the spotlight. Bryce Petty came right in and continued that and was a great college quarterback, put up amazing numbers, and was seen as a guy that was built for this league. And he went to the Jets. he hasn't really gotten his time to shine. I think they have their quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick did wonders with that team. They almost made it to the playoffs, but their offense looked great behind him. So Bryce Petty may be a guy that they're going to give him a chance soon, but right now looks like he's probably not going to play in next year. Brett Hundley was another guy that coming into that draft, everybody thought could have been a great, second round pick, maybe third round pick. He actually went in the 5th round to the Green Bay Packers. And maybe this is going to be an Aaron Rodgers 2.0 type deal. And not in the sense that Brett Hundley isn't going to be Aaron Rodgers, but maybe he's going to go through the same process that Rodgers went through when he was taken in the first round. Maybe he's going to sit for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and when Rodgers is done, Hundley can come right in. Or maybe Hundley is going to be that backup guy that he was never given that chance, and some other team might trade for him and they give him that chance, and maybe he comes out to be a star player. But he's yet again a guy that has a great skill set, but he's not going to play soon, especially on that team, because they might have the best quarterback right now in the NFL. Now, going to the 2014 draft a year or two back, Blake Bortles was the controversial top 5 pick, went number 3 to the Jaguars. And it wasn't a bad pick, but people didn't think he would go top 5. Everybody said Johnny Manziel, he's the guy that has the skill set to take teams to the Super Bowl. He's a guy that's going to be a superstar. Well, Blake Bortles went number 3, and right now he's looking like probably the best guy taken out of that draft, at least right now. And that draft had some pretty good quarterbacks taken in the late 1st, early 2nd round. Now, Johnny Football was taken in the 2nd round. Everybody thought Dallas was going to take him. That was going to be their next guy. Well, they passed on him. The Browns eventually took him. I never really liked him as a quarterback. Now, his off-the-field stuff, that's his own personal stuff. I'm not going to get into that. But I never liked him the way he played. I didn't think he had the size to be a guy that could last in this league. To me, he was too small. Now, Joe, Russell Wilson's the same way. But Russell Wilson's a stocky guy. He's built. He can take hits. Johnny Manziel isn't built the same way that he's built. I think Johnny Manziel's skill set doesn't really fit well in this league. Yeah, he's got speed. He can be a highlight reel type of guy that makes these unbelievable escape a tackle type of, lob up pass that something, miraculously happens, a couple games, but I don't see him being a guy that can last in this league for 10 to 12 years. He may be a good backup guy, but I don't think he has the quality to start. And then in that same draft, Teddy Bridgewater went with the last pick in the 1st round. The Vikings came back and took him, a guy that before that draft even went down, people were assuming he was going to be a top 15 pick, and he didn't. And right now, he's looking like a great young quarterback. He doesn't really have the elite arm or the elite speed, but the guy is smart, and he can break down a defense, and he can read what a defense is going to do. And that's really important to have. Because if you don't have the arm, if you don't have the legs, if you're not smart, then maybe you're not fit for the league. But Bridgewater has the smarts. He knows what he's doing, and he is a leader on that team. And probably my favorite quarterback coming out of that draft, Derek Carr, went in the 2nd round, a top 10 pick in the 2nd round. Oakland has their next great QB, which they haven't had in a long time. Jamarcus Russell, who everybody knows was supposed to be the next franchise NFL type player, never panned out. But Derek Carr is their next great guy. He is a guy that has amazing skills, a cannon for an arm, and is a leader on that team. And is just a guy that has shown what he can do since day one. They gave him the reins to that team, and he's made it work. And right now, Oakland is looking like a pretty good team. They may not be a playoff team right now, but they have some great young future superstars on that team, on the offense and defensive side of the ball. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo was taken also in the 2nd round in that draft, the guy who, when Tom Brady didn't know, they didn't think he was going to play, even though he did. Garoppolo was a guy that maybe this is going to be Tom Brady 2.0. Look what they did with Tom Brady. They're going to do the same thing with this kid. I don't know about that. I don't think anybody right now is going to be Tom Brady 2.0. I think the kid has really good skills. I think he's got good size. I think he's going to be a decent quarterback in this league. But I don't see him being the heir apparent top flight star that maybe some people hope him to be. And then there's some other notable guys. A.J. McCarron was taken in that draft in the 5th round. Talk about a steal. Andy Dalton went down. This kid came in and immediately took the slack for that team. You know, he took the slack off the offense, could make the throws that they needed to make, and was a kid who had experience playing under pressure, and he looked comfortable. Now, he didn't win. You know, he wasn't the playoff winning type of guy that they maybe had this year, but he's a guy that he at least shows that he can compete in this league and he can win. And maybe this is a player that next year or 2 years down the road, maybe a team trades for him, because if Andy Dalton comes back, when he was playing at his best, he was a guy that looked like a top 10 quarterback. And if A.J. McCarron can play the way he did for another team, I think a team would take a risk on it, trading a 2nd or 3rd round pick for him easily for a team that needs a quarterback. And the really good thing about him is he's a quarterback that can fit with a lot of teams. He's a guy, but at the same time, he's a guy that needs talent around him. He's not going to he's not going to win a game by himself. He's not an Andrew Luck type of guy where you can give him the keys day one and say, here, go win us 10, 11 games. No. But if you give him the right talent around him, he can be a great quarterback. Now, the 2013 draft wasn't really any big superstar-filled quarterback type draft. E.J. Manuel was one of the guys that was a Senior Bowl player, was a guy that had a great Senior Bowl, a guy that, man, this kid's got it. This kid shows what he can do. A Florida State player, a guy that was playing really well there. Senior Bowl came, he did really well, and eventually the Bills liked him enough where they took him 16th overall in the 2013 draft. Well, I'm not going to say he's a bust, but he hasn't worked out yet for the Bills. And Geno Smith, yes, the guy that I actually personally liked coming out in this draft. I was pretty surprised, as many people probably were too, that he fell to the 2nd round. I thought he would at least be a 1st round pick. I didn't expect a top 5 pick, but I thought a team in the 20s might take a risk on this kid because I thought he had really good skill set. I thought he was smart. I thought he could make some pretty good throws. And I think that he's still a good quarterback, but I don't think he's the guy that I expected him to be. Because I expected him to be a 1st round pick, and he didn't turn out to be like that. So the 2013 draft wasn't a draft that really had any good quarterbacks coming out. There was one guy in that draft that has turned out to be pretty good, and that was Landry Jones, who was taken in the 4th round. An Oklahoma quarterback, which has had a history of being taken in the 1st round, Sam Bradford. And this guy was pretty good, could have been a 1st round pick, fell all the way to the 4th round. And when Roethlisberger went down, Landry Jones came in and played pretty well. Again, another guy that when the team's elite quarterback is done in a few years, Landry Jones can step in and be their quarterback. So that's a team that you don't have to really look at as maybe looking at a quarterback anytime soon. Now, to the 2012 draft, which was probably the best draft for quarterbacks in the last 5 or 6 years. 3 of the top 10 picks were quarterbacks, including number 1, Andrew Luck, the guy who everybody knew was going to be the number 1 pick. I don't think it was any shock. He was probably going to be the number 1 pick if he came out the year before that. But he didn't come out. He came out in 2012, went number 1 overall to the Colts. And so far, it's looking like a pretty good pick. Looking like a pretty safe pick. Looked like a guy that this year he was hurt. He didn't play that good, but he still has that elite talent. Is still 4 or 5 years down the road, probably going to be a top 3 quarterback in this league. 2nd overall, RG3, a guy that I really liked, and a guy that I think his injury really hurt the way he's playing. Because I don't know if everybody noticed, but he's not the starting quarterback of that team. Kirk Cousins has taken over. And so far, he's playing pretty good, and the guy is probably going to get a pretty good deal this offseason. But I think his injury really hurt him. I think if he never had that severe injury to his leg, I think he might still be playing now. And I look at it as a team that's probably going to take a chance on him because I think he has a great arm. I think he still has his speed. I don't think a team's going to trade for him to be their star player day one, but I think he's going to be a backup role type of guy that can eventually be given a starting role. Dallas may want to trade for him. Another team might want to take a risk on him just to see what they can do. Ryan Tannehill was taken 8th overall in that draft, a guy that only had, I think, 1 or 2 years as a starting quarterback at Texas A&M, a guy that quickly rose in that draft, a guy that was one of those, he's kind of like Wentz. I think that's going to be this year's Wentz. Or I think what Wentz is this year is what he was in the 2012 draft, a guy that was maybe a mid-level first-round pick, a guy that's going to be jumping up into the top 10. And Miami has a good quarterback right now. He has good skills, but I don't see elite top 10 talent in him right now. But if Adam Gase can go into that team and build an offense around him and run the ball effectively, and if their wide receivers can stay healthy along with their offensive line, maybe Ryan Tannehill turns out to be the guy that they thought he was going to be when they took him in the 2012 draft. Now, besides those top guys, there are some stars that were taken in this draft. Russell Wilson was taken in the 3rd round, a guy who many people said, well, he's too small. He's only like 6 foot. He's not gonna make it. But he has the heart and he has the smarts, and he can throw the ball effectively. And he's a very mobile quarterback where he's not going to have a designed run. He's not going to have an RG3 type of run, but he's a guy that is hard to tackle. And he doesn't have to stand in the pocket every play. But he did that for the majority of this year, and it showed that it worked. So he can play in a lot of schemes, and is a guy that has a lot of heart, is a born leader, is a guy that can lead that team. No matter how many times they lose, he can come back and win it for him. And was easily a steal. And if you go back and redo that draft, he would have easily been a first-round pick. Nicky Foles was taken in that draft too, a 3rd-round guy. A guy that for a couple years, the Birds had him. He looked pretty good. His last year, he kind of started to go down. He started to show maybe he wasn't that star player. They took him and a pick, traded him to the Rams, and right now he didn't have the best year that he could have had. He could have played a lot better. Maybe he's going to be better next year, but at the time was seen as being a really good player, and I think he still has some talent left in him, but I think he just needs a better offense around him. And one of the best guys taken in that draft that was a sleeper and was a steal was a guy that was taken to be a backup role was Kirk Cousins. A guy that said, this guy is not going to start ahead of RG3. RG3 gets hurt. He doesn't have that good of a year now. Kirk Cousins comes in, and now he's the star. He's the guy that's going to, he led them to an NFC East title. Now, the NFC East this year wasn't that good, but nonetheless, he still led them to an NFC East title and to the playoffs. So if he can continue that, that is maybe a steal of that draft. So the 2012 draft was very huge in terms of how the NFL is being played out now. Because if Russell Wilson goes in the 2nd round, because the Eagles were supposedly looking at him, if they took him, Seattle maybe isn't that good now. Maybe they never win a Super Bowl, which means maybe Peyton Manning wins a Super Bowl, which changes the whole dynamic of the future of the league. And if Andrew Luck went the year before and RG3 goes first, the Colts are going to be a lot, they're going to be a lot, it's just interesting to see how one move can change everything. If Andrew Luck goes out in the 2011 draft, Cam probably doesn't go number 1 then. Panthers take Luck at 1, let's just say. The Broncos have the number 2 pick. They take Cam, which means Peyton doesn't go to the Broncos, which means he either stays with the Colts or he goes to another team. San Fran, maybe. If Jim Harbaugh's there, maybe they win a Super Bowl. It's just interesting to see how one move can change the entire dynamic of the league. So this is why I'm trying to circle back, because Carson Wentz is one of these guys that is going to be taken higher than most teams probably have him at. It's a guy that is a first-round pick, a guy that's going to be taken in the first round, but there's going to be a team that's going to take a risk on him, maybe in the top 5. Maybe a team trades up and takes him. Maybe they see something in him that a lot of teams don't. Because the guy has great skills, and he's a small school type of kid, and I think that is the X factor of maybe why teams will not look at him as much as other teams will. Because he went to a small school and was a star there. Maybe they don't think he's going to transition into the NFL. Well, he didn't go up against the elite talent, so he's not going to be able to do it in the NFL. Maybe. Or maybe he is taken in the top 10 and he's a star. It's going to be interesting to see where a guy like this falls. And this transitions me into my next point, because why Wentz is becoming the unknown, superstar, Senior Bowl player, a guy that can get into the top 10. The Eagles have a dilemma on their hands, because they do not know right now who their quarterback is going to be. Bradford is up for a new deal. They brought in a new head coach, another offensive-minded head coach, a guy that might be a great head coach. Who knows? But Bradford's deal is up, and we don't know where he is going to sign. And this plays a whole factor into the amount of money that he will want. If you look at a lot of the top deals that quarterbacks have, there are 6 or 7 quarterbacks right now in the league that have over $100 million, led by Jay Cutler, the guy that many people don't like, but his skill set is top 10, but he's not top 10 in terms of the playmaking side of the ball. But he's got the biggest deal maybe any quarterback's ever gotten at 7 years and $120+ million. And I don't expect Bradford to get that at all, unless some team like the Browns want to just go out there and just open up their checkbook and say, name us a price. And he says, I want that. And they say, cool, we'll sign you because we think you're worth that. I don't think he's going to get that. So maybe it's important to look at some of the quarterbacks who are big name, but their skill sets aren't that big, or they had a bad year, that are getting paid decent money right now. Kaepernick right now has probably the biggest deal of a guy that isn't really playing so well at 6 years and $114 million with $61 million guaranteed. That's a guy that Chip Kelly's got to make work then. Because I don't know if a team wants to take on $61 million guaranteed. And if they think he's that good of a player, then fine, trade for him. But that's a big chunk of change that a team's going to have to take on if they think he's that good. You also got Andy Dalton at 6 years, $96 million, but only has $17 million in guaranteed money, which I think is pretty interesting. Which is maybe a team-friendly deal where he says, hey, I'll stay here. I want a lot of money in terms of the entire deal, but I'm not going to take a lot of guaranteed money because I want you guys to be able to sign some players. And I don't want you to have to take a risk on me and say, hey, here's a bunch of guaranteed money. So if I'm not that good, you don't have to think that you're wasting it. Ryan Tannehill is another guy that got a pretty good deal at 4 years, $77 million, but he got $45 million guaranteed. And I think the guaranteed money is what people want to look at. Because I think that's what most contracts now are built around. Because if you get 6 years, 100 plus million, yeah, that's a big deal. But if you only guarantee like 10 to 20 of it, you're not really taking a big risk, because if the guy's not that good, then just cut him. And you don't have to really pay him. But the one quarterback that people want to look at, the deal that maybe he's going to get, is Alex Smith, a guy that is seen as a game-managing type player, but a guy that got the team to the playoffs. So I don't care if the guy passes for 1,000 yards. If he gets me to the AFC title or the divisional round, I don't care. I don't care what his stats look like. If the guy can get me to the playoffs, he's worth signing. So Alex Smith this year got 4 years and $68 million with $45 million guaranteed as well. And that's probably going to be the benchmark of what a lot of fans, a lot of people want to see Bradford get. I don't think they want to see him get a bunch of guaranteed money. But guess what, folks? In this league, you're going to have to. He's not going to take $20 million guaranteed when he can look and say, hey, guys, look, here's a list of 10 to 15 quarterbacks that I think I'm as good as that are getting paid this much money. So this is what I want. And the decision is the options that they have. They have 2 or 3 things that they can do. Option A, which I think is the most logical deal, is you sign him long term. You sign him long term. Now, I'm not saying give him the bank. I'm not saying give him whatever money he wants, but sign him to a reasonable deal. Because the second part of this is the free agents that the Eagles are going to be looking to sign soon. But option A is you sign him long-term for 4 or 5 years. $17 to $18 million per year is what he's going to ask for, and that's what he's going to get regardless of where he goes, because that is how the market is set now. And you got to give him somewhere of $60 to $70 million, probably $30 to $40 million guaranteed. That's what he's going to get, regardless of where he goes. If he goes to the Browns, Eagles, wherever, a team is going to give him that. So that's option A. Option B, which I don't think is a bad idea, even though some people don't want that kind of a cap hit, is you franchise tag him. Which means if some people don't know what that means, is you get him for 1 year at top money, so it's going to be $20 to $25 million on the cap hit, which is a scary thing to think about if you want to sign guys. But you only get him for 1 year, and you can see what he's like. If it's week 6 and the guy is lighting it up, doesn't throw a pick, just looks like an elite player, guess what? Sign him. If he's not that good, cut him after that year. You don't have to pay him any guaranteed money besides the cap hit of what he's paid for that year. And then option C is obviously the road that most people probably don't want to go down, is let him go, take a risk on a young guy. And why this is a scary thing is that there's not a quarterback in this draft that is the foreseen lock number 1 superstar quarterback. There is not an Andrew Luck or a Winston type player in this draft. There are a lot of guys that are really good in this draft. Goff, Wentz, Lynch. These are quarterbacks that are going to have really good, they're going to be in this league for a long time, but they're not guys that you could probably start day 1 and say, hey, go win me 10, 11 games. These are going to be guys that are going to have to sit. So that's option C. And if option C, if you don't take a risk on a young guy, then maybe you got to go with the Sanchez in Mark Sanchez. And I don't think fans want to see that. Not saying the guy's the worst player of all time, but I don't think he's going to win you 10 games. That's just my take on him. I mean, some people may like him. Some people may think he can run a scheme well. I don't think he has the talent to win games or big games, let's just say. So why this whole debacle is important, at least for this team, is the free agents that are going to be coming up this year into next year and the cap that they have. The Eagles right now have about $18 to $19 million in cap space. So you have to think, if you sign Bradford long term, most of your cap is going to be gone then, unless you get rid of some high price players somehow. You sign some guys long term that are going to be taking up a lot of cap, and that's the problem with signing guys to big deals. Ndamukong Suh, a guy that was given $100+ million this year. A guy that, if you want to sign some guys on that team, you may not be able to at this point because Suh's getting paid so much money. So if the Eagles have around $18 million in cap space, that means they have a little bit of room to work with. And at this part of it, you have to look. One of their top defensive backs, Walter Thurman, their safety, maybe their strong safety, who had a great year, could have been potentially a Pro Bowl player, is up on his deal. He's going to be getting a good payday, especially this year because of the way he played. So he's going to be, looking to get a big deal. Vinny Curry, another interesting guy that when he plays, he is a relentless pass rusher. He's not going to get you 90 tackles, but he'll get you 10 sacks. Easy. He's always getting to the quarterback, and he's a guy that's going to be getting a good contract as well. Thurman, Curry, those two guys alone may combine for $10 million plus in cap space. So let's say you sign those guys to whatever deals that they are, and it combines for $10 to $12 million. That means you got $6 to $8 million of cap space to work with. Guess what? Bradford ain't going to be going for that type of cap hit. He's not going to be asking for $20 million over 8 years. He's going to be wanting a big chunk of change. So if you sign your quarterback right now, guess what? Some free agents won't be coming back to this team unless you get rid of some guys that have big deals already on this team. And not just in this year's, not just the guys that want deals this year, but for the next 2 or 3 years. Fletcher Cox, a guy that is seen as being one of the best interior defensive line players in the league. J.J. Watt, Fletcher Cox. The argument could be made that he's probably the second best defensive end right now in this league, which means he's going to be getting a big deal. Not some $30 million. You're talking $70 to $80 million because you have to look. Suh got paid big deal. There are other defensive linemen that are getting paid a lot of money, and he's going to want to look at that and say, these guys are getting paid this. I'm as good as them. I want that. So you're looking at least $8 to $10 million in a cap hit, which takes away your cap like that. Malcolm Jenkins is another guy that his deal's up soon. Not in this year, but next year his deal's up. And that's a guy that maybe the Eagles want to sign long term. He's not old. He's got 5 or 6 good years left in him. And it is a position that is hard to fill in this league. There are not a lot of good safeties. The safety spot is hard to fill, especially if you're a top 10 safety. You can get a guy in the 3rd or 4th round, yeah. But they may not, they're probably not going to pan out to be a star. It's hard to find a great player at that position in this league. Lane Johnson is probably the last guy that is going to want a big deal too. And this is one of the best tackles in the league. Regardless if it's left, right tackle, he's one of the best tackles in the league, period. And good tackles get paid good money, folks. Again, they have a lot of high-priced potential free agents this year. They do not have the cap space to sign all these guys like that. There are always teams in free agency who have $60 million in cap space to spend, and they will throw money at these guys. So you're going to have to make a decision now. You can't wait until June to say, should I sign this guy or this guy? No, that decision should be made right now. Do you want your quarterback for the next 5 years, or do you want some of your other star players for the next 5 years? And that's the risk that this team is going to have to take. If it's me, if I was the GM of this team, and I See, this is why, in some perspective, I'm kind of glad I'm not the GM of this team right now, because these decisions are hard. This isn't a team that has a lot of cap space. If this team has $40+ million in cap space, great. I could sign all these guys to whatever deals that they want, and we're set. Because if you take these 4 or 5 guys off this team, star potential-wise, you don't have a lot of star players. You have some really good players and some good young players, but you don't have a lot of stars on this team. And a lot of these star players are free agents. And you also have to look at it that if you don't sign these guys, who are going to take over the positions? Which is what I'm going to look at right now. If Walter Thurman does not return to this team, strong safety is a hard position to fill, especially if you're a really good one. There are maybe 10 great strong safeties right now. And that's a position where it gets signed. There are not a lot of free agent players at that position in this league. A lot of them get re-signed because every team knows that's a hard spot to fill. An offensive lineman, unless you're top 5 in the league, it's not as hard to fill a guard spot. So if Thurman doesn't come back, you got to look at a few safeties out there that they're not the same potential-wise, but there's some really good players. Jaron Kirsch is a great safety that I love coming out in this draft. Is a guy that has amazing size. He's like 6'4", 220 pounds. Is a guy that doesn't have to be taken in the first round. Is a hard-hitting player. Is a guy that can roam in the backfield. Is a guy that can hit hard. Is a guy that can be taken in the second, third, or fourth round, depending on how teams like him. Jeremy Cash from Duke is another great guy. And this is one of these players where he's safety, linebacker type of role, where he's big to play a linebacker role. And that's one of the new things that this league is going to start to do now. Safeties are becoming linebacker type roles where they're going to be doing a little bit of everything. Jeremy Cash is a great guy that can do that. So if your secondary is set with 3 guys and you want a guy that can hit the runner hard and rush the pass rusher, Jeremy Cash is a guy that can do that for you. And then there are some other guys. Von Bell from Ohio State is another really good player. A guy that is kind of one of those typical safety roles, a guy that hits hard. Coverage skills are pretty good. Is a guy as well that can be taken in the second or third round. And the Eagles not having a second-round pick is another issue because you don't have that extra pick where you could say, okay, well, we don't have to take this guy in the first round, but we got the second round. We can easily come back and take him. You guys don't got that now. So now you have to account for that issue too. So now you got to be smart with your picks. So now you can't look at these second-round guys now. Now you have to look at, do I have to give him in the first round? Do I have to get him in the third round? Do I have to give him in the fourth round? If Vinny Curry doesn't come back, assuming that the Eagles switch to a 4-3, because that's another important step that you have to decide what you're going to do. Are you going to stick with the 3-4 or a 4-3? Because you have players on this team that can fit both schemes. Jim Schwartz is a great defensive-minded coach. So he's going to be able to get the best value out of his players. So if Curry does not come back, this is a draft. I was watching the Senior Bowl practices over the last couple days, and besides Wentz, which is like on everybody's mind at this point, the offense and defensive line in this year's class is amazing. There's talent all over the field. And one of the things that is great about it is the depth. You're going to have defensive linemen worth a first-round pick and guys that are going to be worth a second-round pick that are going to be taken in the third round. And you're going to have a third-round talent that's going to be taken in the fourth or fifth round. It happens every year. Sharif Floyd is a guy I was talking to at work yesterday. Sharif Floyd was a guy that was a top 5 pick. Lock top 5 talent pick. The guy had perfect size to play defensive tackle. A guy that had great skills. The guy went in the teens or 20s. A steal of a pick. It happens every year. So you're going to be having guys in this draft that are at that position. Emmanuel Ogbah from Oklahoma State is a guy that I would keep my eye on, especially if the Eagles want a defensive end, because this is a guy that can play defensive end, linebacker, is a guy that can play in different fronts. And if Jim Schwartz wants to change it up, he can do that with this type of player. And he's going to be playing predominantly and probably, but he's got the size and speed to play both. So that's a great thing to look at. And he's not going to be taken in the top 10. So if the Eagles want to trade back into the 20s, get an extra pick, maybe a second-round pick, wink, wink, that's going to be a guy that you can maybe look at. Carl Nassib from Penn State, the local boy. The guy had like 15 to 17 sacks this year. He's got great size. And he's one of those third or fourth round steals. And if you can get him at that spot, the guy can start for you. Power is top notch. Speed is there. And he's got great size. He's like 6'6", 6'7". He's got the length. He's got everything. Now, he hasn't done it every year, which is why he's not going to be a first-round pick unless some team loves him and knows something about him that other teams don't. But right now, he's going to be a second or third-round pick. If the Eagles can somehow get a third-round pick on him, great pick. Sean Oakman was a guy. See, this was one of these guys that if you look him up, vines, photos, whatever, when you look at him, just by his looks, the guy is built like a truck. He is huge. He looks like a guy that is going to be a Hall of Fame player. See, I mean, if you look at him, he has amazing size. I think he's 6'8", 290 pounds. The guy's built like a rock. The guy's power is great. He's a freak of nature skill-wise. But the thing about him is he doesn't consistently do it well. He has skills, but he doesn't use it all the time. He'll have a big play here, a big play there, and then that's it. He's that guy that it's like, man, this guy's so good. Where has he been? Oh, well, he's been here the whole time, but he can't consistently do it. So if he can get on a team that can develop his skill set with a Jim Schwartz type of guy, that could be a steal of a pick. And a year or two back, I thought he was going to be a top 10 pick. Because when you look at the guy looks like he could be a first-round pick. But he doesn't play like it, which is why he's going to be going in the later rounds. Shalik Calhoun is another one of those guys. Michigan State has consistently had a great defense. And this guy 2 or 3 years back would have been a first-round pick. He's probably not going to go in the first round now, but he's a guy that can play easy, and he's set for the defensive end spot. And it's what you need, especially if you're going to a 4-3, because you need guys that can play a 4-3. A lot of teams are going to a 3-4 hybrid-style scheme now where they play predominantly 3-4, but they have some 4-3 players in there that kind of flip in and out of that spot. But if you're going into a base 4-3 defense, this guy can play it with the best of them and consistently do it. And he's not a guy that's going to flash. He's not going to give you like these crazy pick six run plays. He's not going to be Watt. But he's going to be a guy that consistently makes plays. Chandler Jones is kind of a guy that I kind of look at that. He's a guy that he doesn't have the Watt type of fame, but he makes plays every game. And if that draft that he was taken in was redone, Chandler Jones probably wouldn't have been a top 15 pick easily. Shalik Calhoun, Sean Oakman, Carl Nassib, and Emmanuel Ogbah would be the defensive ends that I look at. But it's going to be interesting because you have to see where they look in the first round and in the third round, or if they can somehow get a second-round pick. Now to the last position of need. If Sam Bradford does not come back to the Philadelphia Eagles, there are 3 quarterbacks that I would look at. And I'm going to go in reverse order in terms of where I would take them. Christian Hackenberg comes in at number 3. A guy that on one of my shows a week or two back, I said, since day one, I've loved this kid as a quarterback. He's got elite skills, elite size, but he doesn't consistently make accurate throws. Now, the offense didn't help him out that much because the offensive line wasn't that good and the wide receivers weren't catching the ball. They weren't making the plays that they need to make to win games. But the guy can make every throw, elite size, is a leader, just needs a great staff to help him out and needs weapons around him. So that would be my number 3 pick of the quarterback that I would take to replace Bradford if he doesn't come back. Number 2 is Connor Cook. Now, actually, I could flip-flop 3 and 2, but I think Connor Cook is my number 2 spot because I think because over the last 3 or 4 years, he's been a constant playmaker at quarterback for Michigan State. Now, Michigan State's defense is probably top 10 or top 20 last year, but they were a top 4 team. Regardless if they won or lost, they were a top 4 team. And if you don't have a good quarterback, you're not going to be a top 4 team, period. So I think Connor Cook can make plays. He doesn't have the best arm, but he's a guy that consistently gets it done, a la Andy Dalton, the guy that's not going to throw 75 yards, but he's a smart guy. He can make plays, and he's a leader on his team. Connor Cook is that. He's a bigger version of that. So he's a guy that can fall in the 2nd or 3rd round. Or he might be one of those guys that a team trades up into the late 1st round and takes him. Especially if it's a team that needs a quarterback. If Houston takes a defensive player and an offensive player in the 1st round, maybe they trade back in the 1st round and take a guy like that. But right now, Connor Cook would be my number 2 spot. And number 1, the number 1 quarterback that I would look at if Sam Bradford does not come back to this team is the guy that is over the last 3 days taken over the Senior Bowl, and that is Carson Wentz. And the reason why I say that is because of 2 things. Actually, 3 things. 1, the understanding of which is what any fan can see at this point. Jared Goff, Paxton Lynch will probably not be there when the Eagles pick. Period. Unless Carson Wentz is better than Lynch to most scouts and Lynch falls. But right now, Goff and Lynch probably both go in the top 10. So if Carson Wentz is there at 13 and Sam Bradford isn't there, you got to take him. And 2 of the main reasons why, besides the other 2 players not being at that spot, is 1, he can fit a lot of schemes. The guy has speed, he has size, he can make every throw. So Doug Peterson and Frank Reich can work with him and mold him into the quarterback that they want. So if they want a guy that can run the read, if they want a guy that can run, a guy that can make plays with his feet, then that's great. You got that guy there. But if they want a quarterback that's going to throw from the pocket every play, great. They got that guy too. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and what I think is going to throw some people off, is going to scare some people off, is the fact that he is a small school type of player. Because just because you go to a small school or a big school doesn't mean you're going to be a star or a bust. There have been some great quarterbacks that have went to small schools that turn out to be superstar players. Cam Newton, for one example, yes, Auburn was where he won the national title and where he was drafted number 1 overall, but he wasn't at Auburn his entire career in college. Joe Flacco, from the local University of Delaware, won a Super Bowl. Now, he may not be as good as he was, and he's also been hurt. He's a small school kid. I think Ben Roethlisberger went to University of Miami, I think. Small school guy, probably going to be a Hall of Fame type player. I mean, there are guys that are from small schools that make these things happen. Tony Romo, regardless of what you say about the guy, regardless if you like him, hate him, or don't care, the guy came from a small school and over the last 7 to 10 years has been a pretty good quarterback. Now, maybe in the first half of his career, he wasn't that good, but over his last 2 or 3 years, when he's been playing really good, especially last year. Not the year that just happened when he's been hurt, but when Dallas went to the playoffs. He was having an MVP type of year. Another small school guy. Just because you go to a small school doesn't mean, And the thing that I think about is Carson Wentz has been a successful quarterback there. So at least from the perspective of me, at least from the way that I look at it, I would think that a college that's bigger than North Dakota State would offer him a deal where they would say, hey, transfer to our school, you'll start here. Now, I don't know if that actually went down. That's just what my thought is. So if that's actually what happened and he said no, that shows a leadership skill. But even if that didn't happen, he won national titles there. The guy's being recognized as being a potential top 10 pick from North Dakota State. I don't see how much clearer that can be that the kid has potential. I don't know if he's worth being a top 5 pick because I think Goff is a more accurate thrower of the ball and is a smarter player right now. And I think Lynch is more physically built for this league and his throws are better. But Carson Wentz has potential to be a first-round pick. And if Sam Bradford doesn't come back, Carson Wentz has to be their guy. Period. Not any. And if the Eagles have to trade up for him, then no, you can't do that then. You can't risk a third or fourth, a future first-round pick for a guy that you don't really know. Because, like I said, when the combine and everything comes around, it's easy to throw a ball 70 yards. But when the game is on the line and the pressure is on you, sometimes those plays don't get made. That's why Hackenberg is a guy that is going to be one of those guys, combine time. The man's going to look like an elite number 1 pick, but he's not going to be taken in the first round. There's at least one or two players every single combine. Don Tari Poe was a guy that was a smaller school player, but his combine stats were off the chain. Like they were off the charts. They were unreal. The guy's 40-yard dash, you can look it up. The guy probably runs faster than me, and he's probably twice my size. And I'm not 100 pounds wet, folks. So, combine can help, but you have to look at the career that a guy's had. And there are some guys that start off college-wise that are stars in the first year and then slump. And then you have guys that are seen as being a top player, have a slow start, and then junior, senior type of year are stars. RG3 was kind of like that way. He had a good freshman and sophomore year, but when he won the Heisman Trophy, that was in the second half of his college career there. But Carson Wentz has been consistently doing it. And that's an important factor that the Eagles, Cowboys, Browns, whoever have to take into account. Do not look at the logo on his helmet. Look at the tape. Look at when you talk to him. Ask him, if this play is going to happen, what are your thoughts on it? How do you feel about coming to a market that you're going to be booed if you don't make a good play? Or how do you feel about having everything put on you if a team wins, loses, whatever? So these next 2 or 3 weeks, these next 2 or 3 months are going to be the most crucial. Is going to be the most crucial time for this team and for a lot of teams. So there you have it today, folks. I want to thank everybody for listening into my show today. I will be back same time Tuesday at 11 a.m. I will also be doing my big board of running backs, continuing on the offensive side of the ball. Thank you for listening in. You're listening to 98.5 WNUW LP Aston.